What's going on, Doctor Who fans? I'm Terrell, and The Devil's Chord, the second episode of Doctor Who, was a much needed serious episode after the more juvenile tone of Space Babies. I'm breaking down the Easter eggs and details you might have missed in The Devil's Chord. This will be a play-by-play breakdown of the latest episode of Doctor Who, explaining what you might not know, Easter eggs that you may have missed, callbacks to the previous episodes, as well as my theories as to what may happen next. Spoilers for episode 2 incoming, don't forget to subscribe, and now if you're ready, let's do this. The episode begins with famous composer Timothy Drake playing the mysterious Devil's Chord. Now, Timothy Drake does sound a lot like Tim Drake, aka Robin or Red Robin, but as far as I'm aware, there was no intentional connection to the DC Comics character. I think Russell just came up with a random name. Also, I checked, no, he's not a real composer either. He is, however, played by Jeremy Lim, whose father, Roger Lim, actually wrote music for Doctor Who back in the 80s. The Devil's Chord in music, or the tritone, is a chord that kind of gives off a dark, almost evil and sinister tone. The old superstition surrounding it was that if you struck that chord, you may summon the devil. However, remember back to the 60th anniversary specials. Basically, since the Doctor invoked superstition at the edge of the universe, the edge of creation itself, superstitions and things that were once myths are now able to be real. That's how bi-generation occurred, that's how goblins have appeared, and now that's how creatures from other universes, like the gods of the Pantheon, are able to step forward. And this laid way for the entrance of Maestro, played by Jinx Monsoon, the god of music. And before you say it, yes, Maestro is Italian for the Master, but Russell T Davies has said that the Master, as well as a lot of other classic Doctor Who villains, are going to be put on the shelf in making way for these new characters. Some mystery figure did pick up the Master in the gold tooth of the toy maker, but I guess we're going to come back to that in season 2. Now, Maestro used this kid as the harbinger for their arrival, and I'm wondering if other gods have harbingers for their arrival. Makes me curious about Miss Ruby Sunday. Back on the TARDIS, the Doctor and Ruby decide to visit the Beatles in 1963, the same year that the show did air on television. When they arrive on Abbey Road, and naturally they recreate the Beatles album cover. And yes, this episode continues the new tradition of the Doctor and companion changing outfits to be era appropriate in whatever area they land in. So get used to it, there's going to be a lot of style, and shout out Pam Down because all of her designs have been incredible. When they enter the studios, they find that the Beatles and the rest of the world have been stripped of the sound of music, or the sound of good music anyway. They investigate and they find that the lack of music over time has caused the world to go into complete chaos. And now history has changed. Side note, I don't know if this was intentional, but I do appreciate that they made the Made Here Caribbean, because the 1960s/late 50s was a time where a lot of Caribbeans were being brought in after the war to help with work. It's actually how my family first came here. They were part of the Windrush generation. Now, as I say, the Beatles wound up being awful, and as was Cilla Black, a popular singer and TV presenter at the time, often associated with the rise of the Beatles. Now, here's where it gets juicy. Don't forget about this. Working at the studio, serving tea, is a woman played by actress Susan Twist, who has actually appeared in both the Christmas special, the Space Babies episode, and the episode Wild Blue Yonder. Yes, this same actress has been appearing all across time and space, seemingly following the Doctor. In fact, it seems like they're making a point to have the Doctor always turn away whenever she appears. So at this point in time, though we have seen her multiple times, the Doctor has never actually looked this woman in the face, so maybe it's someone that he would recognize, maybe his granddaughter. Because yes, for the first time in a good few years, the Doctor references his granddaughter, Susan Foreman, saying yes, in 1963 that she and him were both living out by a junkyard where the TARDIS was parked up. This is pretty much before the start of the series in Unearthly Child. Throughout the series, we have not learned too much about the Doctor's family lineage, other than the fact that yes, he has a granddaughter. He may or may not have had a mother that appeared in the end of time. We don't know too much about the children that he would have at some point. He does mention that family lineage with Time Lords gets confusing, so maybe she's a future grandchild that we just haven't seen the child's offspring of yet. It's a lot. Now, he mentions he doesn't actually know where she is at this point. The last time he saw her, he left her with her love in the very far future, but he implied that the Master's attack that ended the Time Lords didn't just destroy the ones on Gallifrey, it spread like a virus across the universe. I'm thinking like Order 66 style. We then get a beautiful scene of Ruby playing the piano on top of a rooftop in London, and they got a professional pianist to play Ruby Sunday. But then things get scary when Maestro appears. And as they do, they let out the arpeggio tone, otherwise known as the giggle. That was the tone that the toy maker, the god of games, used to drive the world into chaos. This is because Maestro is one of the toy maker's legions. We find out that they are one of his children, other gods of fundamental concepts wreaking havoc across the universe. The Doctor even specifies and refers to them as a part of the pantheon of gods, and I believe he's talking about the pantheon of Discord, a group of primordial beings in the Whoniverse that have powers over fundamental concepts of it. One such being was the Trickster from the Sarah Jane Adventures, another now being Toymaker, and adding to that list is Maestro. I'm wondering if other gods, like the gods of Ragnarok, are also a part of this. The Doctor brilliantly uses the sonic screwdriver to cancel out sound and hide from Maestro, and I loved this. this scene. I especially love how the white noise comes in and then fades into the silence. It was just such a powerful audio experience. Now, when Ruby tries to convince the Doctor that the world doesn't end in 1963, he takes her to June 2024, her time, implying that there's been 6 months of adventures between Space Babies and this episode, which makes Ruby's comments saying that the Doctor never runs make a lot more sense, because otherwise how would she know that? I mean, he literally ran last episode from the boogeyman. And now in the future, June 2024, the world is completely destroyed. This was a callback to a classic Doctor Who episode, The Pyramids of Mars, where Sarah Jane basically asked the exact same question, and the Doctor takes her back to her time in, I believe, what, 1983, and shows her the world destroyed if they didn't stop Sutekh back in 1910. Which, now that I said that out loud, Sutekh, by the way, is also a god. Now, music destroying the world may seem like a ridiculous concept, but it kind of makes sense. For centuries, music has bonded people. It's celebration. It's a manifestation of joy. You take that away and a world-ending disaster seems to kind of make sense. Maestro reveals that their plan is to take so much music from the universe itself that they become powerful enough to silence the natural tones of the universe. And they mention to defeat them, the Doctor would need to be a genius and find the exact chord to put them away. Pretty much defining the rules of the game needed to defeat Maestro, much like how they needed to define the rules of the game to defeat Toymaker. And a hilarious and maybe my favorite moment comes when Maestro comes to take Ruby when the Doctor and her are in the booth, and the music from the background that was scoring the scene is actually revealed to be music that was inside the room, and the Doctor turns and goes, I thought that was non-diegetic. So in case you're not a film nerd, diegetic sound is the term used for sound that's heard within the universe of the film production. So if a character, say, plays music on a jukebox, that music is diegetic, they can hear it. However, music that is scored for a scene, like the beautiful piano melody of a really romantic scene, that's non-diegetic. That's for us to hear, not the characters. One of many fourth wall breaks we see the Doctor reply that does make me a little curious and lend to a theory I have that I'll talk about at the end of this video. But we'll get to that for now. Yeah, Ruby is taken and we find out that there was a hidden song in her soul, and the song was Carol of the Bells, the same song we hear on the night that she was found on Ruby Road. Maestro says that she bears a similar power to the oldest one. Presumably this is the same person that Toymaker described as the one who waits, a villain even more powerful than them. So I feel like we are led to believe that Ruby is the child of this mysterious creature. The Doctor and Maestro play a brilliantly done music battle. Reminds me a lot, of course, of the Doctor Strange music battle, though I feel like this was pretty unique in and of itself. But the day is saved when John Lennon and Paul McCartney find the lost chord to put Maestro away. Of course they do. When music is restored, the Doctor and Ruby head to the roof again, and we get a little Easter egg to the very first episode of the show itself, Chris Waits. Chris Waits and the Carolers were a fictional band mentioned by Ian Chesterton way back in the original serial of the show. He said that they were a band that was soon to be topped by the Beatles, and that's funny because in the 1960s, the Beatles were just rising to their popularity. And the episode ends with a giant musical number featuring the dancers from Strictly, Johannes and Shirley. And that scene was choreographed by Bridgerton choreographer Jack Murphy. But during that scene, very briefly, we curiously do see that Harbinger is still alive, that little kid that brought Maestro back. So I'm wondering if Maestro could return again this season. Now, the big theory I want to bring to you, and it's my big theory of the season I'm going to be keeping an eye out on, could the Doctor be a god? This sounds ridiculous, but think about the facts. We know that the Doctor is the timeless child, a creature that came from another universe or dimension, according to the Master. Much like how Maestro and Toymaker also come from their own pocket reality. And think about this, the only characters in this era that we've seen be able to fully break the fourth wall have been Maestro, the Toymaker, Mrs. Flood, and the Doctor himself. But now I hear you ask, god of what? God of time, surely, because he's a Time Lord? No, because there was an entire planet of people who could time travel, goblins can time travel. That's not juicy enough for me. No, I think the Doctor could be a god of life. His fundamental driving force is that the Doctor is always compelled to save lives. That's just built into the Doctor's DNA almost. But also built into his DNA, regeneration. This was an ability that was unique only to the Doctor, the timeless child that was then spliced into the Time Lords. If the Toymaker's native thing was games, if Maestro's native thing was music stealing, then what if the Doctor's native thing is to give and breathe and manifest life itself? And there's been a lot of focus on it. The Doctor came into this universe through bi-generation, literally life sprung from another. The first two major episodes of this Doctor have been surrounding babies, the start of life. And we also got a very strange and peculiar scene of the Doctor literally breathing life into a butterfly. Now, they have done that before with their regeneration energy, but that specific focus on it makes me very curious. Stick with me because I'm going to be pulling that thread right into the finale of the show, curiously titled Empire of Death, the antithesis to life. Thank you for joining me on this breakdown breakdown of Doctor Who and this entire saga of breaking down every single episode. I'm gonna get these out as soon as I possibly can whenever the episodes drop, dissecting all of the interesting details that make this show so great. Comment below letting me know your theories of the season, what other gods could show up, and who is Susan Twist? Let's get talking about it. You can find me on all of my socials at Theories by T. I've been Terrell, and that's the tea.